Max, well, I can finally get some time with you, just you and me. A lot of things have happened since we last saw each other. Both good and bad, as life usually is. But I mean, a lot of things just don't feel the same anymore. I like to put on this mask and, tell everyone around me that I've been doing better, but truthfully, that's not the case. I've struggled with depression for years, especially after my aunt died, and you knew that, but that even when I choose to be joyful, it still doesn't feel like it's enough. It's almost like nothing can fix how I feel, even when I ask God. Which is why sometimes I think that you're the lucky one, bro. I really feel like you're the lucky one. You could ask God all the questions you have and be in His presence and feel at peace in some way. And I'm stuck here trying to reach for a sense of peace that I can't really ever touch. But with all that being said, I just want to say that I miss you a lot. I wish I had more time with you, and I'm sure everyone else would say the same. I wish I could talk to you again, be stupid with you, and just be real with you. I'll forever love you, bro. So before I leave, as the gamers say, I will press F to pay my respects. Alright, Max. Much love. Can't wait to be with you again, bro.
Is the depression mild, or do you feel like it's pretty heavy right now?
It's been better than it was before.
Good.
But anxiety decided to take over.
It took over.
Yeah, I guess I just have a whole feeling of unease all around.
Yeah.
So.
We call it an aura.
Yeah.
It's just like you can feel it coming on. You're like, oh crap. Do you want me to send any medicine for you to have from now until we know more, of just as like a rescue or anything to have like that? You don't have to, but it's just optional.
It couldn't hurt.
It couldn't hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess those feelings of like feeling more tired also make me more anxious because I like to be in control.
Yep. All I can say is there's light at the end of the tunnel. I do know that being in group settings is across the board statistically the biggest trigger.
Yeah, because that wasn't an issue before.
Right.
I've been around crowds of people a bunch of times, so I don't know why it's happening in crowds now.
And you're a social guy, you're not scared to talk to people. It's not like you're shy. It's not from that necessarily.
Yeah, no.
It's something else.
I just don't like having to live with it.
You're not gonna be this way forever.
I remember I was going to worship practice and I was about to leave and pack up. And I get to my trunk, both my guitars and amp are gone. And I can assure you the first words out my mouth were not, the Lord gave and the Lord has taken, may the name of the Lord be praised. My first inclination was, why? God, what is wrong? Like, what did I do? Like, I just praised you on Easter. We just celebrated the resurrection. Why now are these things being taken from me? In that moment, what I needed to remember, and I think what we all need to remember, church, is that we can't get attached to these things of this world. Because one, they were never ours. And two, we're not taking any of it with us. The only thing that we're taking is our soul and now it's going to be meeting with God. And that's all that's going to stand before us. Not our accolades, not our achievements, not the things we had, not the house, not the car, not the family even. Us and God. Our hearts and God. So Job has 3 friends who came to comfort him and share their firm convictions about why Job was suffering. And they claim that all the suffering is a result of sin and the prosperity and the results of virtue, aka vending machine faith. Job's defense, though, through it all is that he's innocent of any wrongdoing. And it leaves them disagreeing on whether or not God is just, because then Job proceeds to lament about the injustice that God lets wicked people prosper while the countless other innocent and righteous people suffer. How do you go from may the name of the Lord be praised to, man, does God even care about the righteous? God never explains exactly why Job is suffering. He never tells him why. He only tells him what he's taking care of, which is everything. So he's like, why would I give you this explanation that maybe may solve it? But then what's the point of faith? What's the point of you trusting in me, Job? Job's perspective went from, does God even care about me? Does God even care about the righteous? From, man, God. My perspective is no longer about, man, God, what are you not doing? But God, man, what can't you take care of? And it convicts me because it shows me, man, I just have this. And God's got all of this.
How do you have patience in suffering, spiritually or just in life?
A lot of my life, I feel like, has been just patience and suffering. I can struggle with the idea that God has an overall plan for my life. However, working on patience, it's a process that is ever growing, at least in my life, and it's something that's been a part of my faith. Something that keeps me grounded is to know that I have friends in my life who will continue to hold me higher, continue to help me grow my patience and perseverance in working on that. So, yeah.
Because what I have now is education piece, the briefly defining what mental health versus mental illness is. Mental illness is multifaceted, talking about like how genetics, trauma, or early childhood experiences affect it, emphasizing that it's not a sin to be struggling with mental illness.
Right.
And then do we want to talk about common church stigmas that we see?
And then talking about like in the church, like it's seen as a sin, like when or as a spiritual failure if you're struggling with mental illness. Your mental health kind of reflecting your spiritual health and kind of like addressing like that's not a thing. That doesn't mean you're spiritually struggling. It can mean that, but it doesn't mean,
So do we want to have this be like an open forum question of like what are some common stigmas that you see when it comes to the church and how they view mental health?
I feel like that can lead to like trauma dumping.
It could potentially be like a hot topic.
Yeah, like last midweek, it was a little tense.
Yeah, people going through it.
That's the thing. Like because you're not taking care or you haven't had these conversations as often about mental health, there's these beliefs that people have as the truth because it's their experience, but that doesn't mean it's the truth. It's just their experience.
Yeah.
What do you think would be a good movement towards empathy and holding in that like space for this discussion questions? Like, yes, some people do state things out of fact because it was their experience, but I think that just shows like
they need to talk about like they need more conversation and more. That's where I feel like therapy, like workshops or something. I don't know. Like
I know therapy can add up. It's not like a cheap resource for everyone, despite it being so necessary. But
Yeah. Julie said mental health is a person's spiritual, emotional, psychological, and social well-being. She said mental illness is a health condition that affects a person's thinking, mood, or behavior. Stigma, she defined what a stigma is. It's a mark, stain, or blemish. And the way to overcome the stigmas is education. Brought the statistics of like 1 in 5 people have mental disorders. She put scripture references, biblical characters who had gone through mental illness situations. David battling with depression, Jeremiah. Then again with that physical, like you wouldn't tell a diabetic to just pray and go to church, to solve their physical issues. So why would we do the same for mental,
And we can talk about like, okay, like instead of telling people go pray or go do your quiet times more, like what to do, I guess, like what is, another way to
like moving into practicals.
Yeah, like okay, like ask more questions, like don't assume, just try to understand.
I would caution between like empathizing and enabling.
It's not going to be just on Brittany or
Right.
just on you to be that person's, spiritual therapist, like it's not what we're doing, but we are called to love one another, and part of loving one another is understanding one another, seeking to understand, empathizing. But I do like what you said about like not enabling, like not letting it get to a point where it just spirals. God starts to be missed in it all, because it becomes more just personal hurt and things that have gone on.
I wouldn't want it to be like, oh, I'm at the mercy because you're like going through so much. Not to say that you shouldn't have empathy and you shouldn't be compassionate, but also like we do as Christians want to lead them back.
Yeah, and sharpen each other.
Yeah, and refine through the fire.
Yes.
The other night when we were hanging out at a Japanese garden festival, I had a panic attack right before we went inside. During the panic attack, Nick stayed with me and security called over a med team. Everyone else in the group went inside, but these guys, they just stayed with me until my body started to recover. And then 2 days later, on an evening walk, I had another one. And I asked God just to take away this irrational fear, this obstacle that consumes me. It's a cup that I don't want to live with anymore. And I also prayed that if he doesn't take it away from me, that I'm able to adapt and continue persevering, and that I can trust him in the process. When these things happen, I can get so insecure. I can feel like the biggest burden on the planet, and feel like my anxiety is the reason I'll never be good enough for my friends, for a future partner, for a future family, because nobody really wants to put up with someone like me. It's not worth sacrificing loving someone as messed up as me. But I know deep down that's just a lie. So that is why I absolutely cannot forget that God has breathed new life into me. His breath revitalizes me. His breath renews me, refines me, and inspires me, even when I feel like I don't have any breath in me. Because his breath is the source of life I need. The source of life that everyone needs on this earth. I think we can take the power of Jesus' sacrifice and his resurrection too lightly at times. He prayed many times to God to not be taken to the cross, but he also knew that it was God's will to pay for our transgressions and to take the full brunt of our sin and our mistakes. Jesus died for people who didn't deserve it because he loved us more than anything else. I think the reason we truly suffer on this earth is because we often forget how much power the cross has. When we fail, we tend to think that's the end-all be-all, but Jesus didn't die for us to think that way. Instead, his death reminds us that there's hope at the end of it all. We just need to remember to keep our eyes on him and to just breathe. It's been quite the journey so far. So what have I learned? I've learned to cherish those around me because we'll never know when their time on earth comes to a close. I've learned from others that I need to bring my sufferings to God in order to grow. I've learned that it can be scary to deal with your sufferings, but we should also be inspired by it. I've learned to be grateful and to not take joy for granted. I've learned that God is the ultimate provider in every circumstance. I've learned that God will always be the same God no matter what stage of life we're in. I've learned to have patience and love, no matter how difficult it may seem to love those who seem undeserving of it. I've learned that growing within itself is painful, but you'll still be further from the bottom. I've learned that there are still good things in spite of all the trials and tribulations we face. And finally, I've learned that we need to just slow down in this fast-paced world and to just take a breath, and that God has got it all under control.